That we've been warning you about now for several weeks.
That's right. Most federal buildings and military bases across the country are no longer accepting Montana ID cards as a valid form of identification.
Now, our Montana McLaughlin joins us now with a look at exactly where your Montana state ID will grant you entry and where it won't. Montana?
Yeah, Steve, Laurel. Now, these restrictions, they're nothing new. They all come from the federal government's Real ID Act that was passed in 2005. Now, that set a national standard for state-issued ID cards. But Montana lawmakers have refused to comply with the ID card standards for years over privacy concerns. And since we haven't upgraded our IDs, the first restrictions on Montana IDs are now in effect. Time is up. Montana ID card restrictions are here. That means if you don't have one of these, or a military or tribal ID, you can cross off visiting the Malmstrom Air Force Base in Great Falls. We called them, and they told us Montana residents will need a federally compliant ID to enter.
I don't understand why a state-issued ID isn't considered a real or valid ID.
We had that question too. Here's what we found. IDs accepted under the Real ID Act include a passport or passport card, a military ID, or a tribal ID. But if you don't have one of those and still want to enter federal facilities in the state, there is some good news for you. There are still several locations in the state that will accept your Montana ID. Those include the National Guard facility at Fort Henry Harrison and Helena, VA clinics, Montana federal courthouses, and post offices. They're all making exceptions to the rules. But we also wanted to know, will Montanans be blocked from entering federal courthouses in other states? We reached out to federal courthouses in Idaho. They didn't get back to us. The ones in Wyoming didn't know for sure. But we did find your Montana state ID will still work for voting, driving, and for Social Security, according to the Department of Homeland Security. Kyle Hauk says he'd be happy with a new ID after his wore down.
Well, I definitely think that we probably need to figure out a way to transition in between the two of them, but I would like to have higher quality IDs for Montana, so yeah.
But for now, restrictions will remain in place until either Montana lawmakers or the federal government make a change. Now, many of you had questions on our Facebook page today about this. Several people asked about travel within the U.S. Travel restrictions at airports do not go into effect until January of next year. Other people asked, if you were to get a new Montana state ID card today, would that be accepted? The answer is no. Montana IDs are not manufactured right now to federal standards. Live in Missoula, Montana McLaughlin, NBC Montana.
We told you previously how U.S. Senators Steve Daines and Jon Tester introduced legislation to repeal the Real ID Act. We called their offices today and they told us the bill is still waiting for a committee hearing. Neither senators have received a response regarding the emergency extension they asked for last week.
The Department of Homeland Security reports 25 states and Washington, D.C. are now fully compliant with the Real ID law. 20 states have been granted extensions. Maine wasn't granted an extension, just like Montana. And Washington, Minnesota, and Missouri are listed as non-compliant. You can find all our coverage of the new